Welcome to the organization and management of a choice-based art room presentation for the Art of Education. My name is Cassidy Reinken and I will be your presenter today. I have a bachelor's degree from Luther College, which I received in 2005, a master's degree from Morningside College, which I received in 2008, and most recently in 2013 I earned my National Board certification. I am a middle school modified choice art teacher. I am also actively involved in leadership roles in my district, and so I am the middle school visual arts PLC leader, and we are currently in the process of rewriting our curriculum to align with the National Core Art Standards. I'm also a model classroom teacher where I help people focus on technology integration and implementing personalized learning and choice in their classroom. I'm also on my building leadership team, and I am a recipient of an innovation grant for a classroom set of iPads, so I integrate technology in my classroom. Just a little bit about my school. I teach at Roosevelt Middle School, which is in the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Roosevelt is an inner city middle school. It has a unique population of very diverse students. We are a Title I school, also a turnaround school. There's about 565 students. 70% of these students receive free and reduced lunch. And we have quite a few different programs at our school. We have an intellectual disabilities program where we actually have 3 different levels. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3. We have a behavior focus program and also an English language learner program. And about 25% of my students have IEPs. So you're probably wondering, why do I teach choice-based art? So since receiving my National Board certification back in 2013, I really have became focused on being very reflective in everything I do. So I'm continually reflecting on student learning in my classroom, and so I wanted more for my students. I knew that there had to be more, and so I began researching personalized learning and differentiated instruction, and it finally led me to choice-based art and teaching for artistic behavior. And so I kind of just started reading everything I could get my hands on regarding these topics. I would read books and blogs and watch videos and go to presentations and just really immerse myself in the topics. And so as you research choice in your classroom, I suggest you do the same thing. At the beginning of my research, while reflecting on my current practice, I vividly remember a comment one of my students wrote on their self-reflection forms. So I asked on the form, "Why did you create this artwork?" And their response was, "Because you made me." And it really got me thinking that if they're making art because I'm making them make art, what would make them make art when they're not in my class? So when someone else wasn't making them make art, would they actually create? I wanted my students to make art because they wanted to make it. And so I remember having a conversation with a dear friend and colleague of mine, and she once said, as a middle school art teacher, this is often the last time my students will take art. This is the last opportunity we have to make them learn the importance of art. So I asked myself, why do I want my students to, or what do I want my students to know? Why do I want them to be creative? Why do I want them to push themselves? And so one of the books that I most recently read is by Tony Wagner, and it's called Creating Innovators. And so in this book, Wagner discusses how we help youth change the world by how we educate them. So one person in the book, their philosophy was aligned with my vision for my classroom. Scott Rosenberg is the founder of Art Start, which is a nonprofit organization for at-risk youth in New York City. And he believes that we need to teach students how to be passionate and give them purpose. We need to give them a reason to learn. And so choice-based art gives students a reason to care about their art, to let their passions shine through. So in this book, Creating Innovators, Wagner says, Scott helped them, as in students, give voice to their designs, ideas, and aspirations. When you give young people a real voice, some of what they have to say will be challenging, even disruptive, as Scott discovered. But if we are truly serious about leaving no child behind and enabling every youth person to become an innovator, then these are risks we must take. I wholeheartedly believe in this quote, and we as art educators need to take risks. We need to give our students freedom to be creative, to problem solve, to collaborate, to play, to experiment, to have choice. And my curriculum wasn't aligning with my teaching philosophy, so I revamped it and I added choice. It was the best decision I've ever made. My students are more engaged. They know what they're learning. They are proud of their artwork. They're taking their artwork home. I had students throwing artwork away in my classroom, or really I would ask them not to do it in my classroom, but they were throwing it away. And they're really proud of it now. There is a decrease in negative behaviors in my classroom as well, which is really, really important. So, choice also naturally aligns with the 21st century skills. So it teaches students how to be critical thinkers, how to communicate, collaborate, and be creative. Students are learning how to be adaptive and also flexible because things don't always go as they planned, and that's just how life is. And so a lot of times my students might come up with an idea that I don't really think is going to work, and I sometimes let them, because I want them to see for themselves if it's going to work. And sometimes I think it's not going to work, and it does, and they prove me wrong, which is a great learning experience for myself as well. So students are really learning all of these characteristics, and they are also aligned with the new standards. So one of the biggest changes through the implementation of choice is an increased opportunity for my students to collaborate, which is one of the things that was really missing from my previous curriculum. So in my classroom, students are given multiple opportunities to collaborate. Initially, I was scared to let them collaborate because I assumed it would mean that they would spend a lot of time off task and talking with their friends. I frequently did everything I could to keep them as far away from their friends at times. However, most of them work really well together, and I've seen some very successful projects because they're given this opportunity. So most recently, a group of 4 students wanted to work together on a stop-motion animation video, which was going to be used in a district video, which was a really important video. It was the State of the Union, State of the District video. So my gut reaction was to say no. You can't work together. However, I ignored this reaction and I let them work together. And I was very impressed with the quality of their work and their final product. So examples like this really push me as an educator to get outside of my comfort zone, to allow my students to make choices and to be creative and to work in unique environments, because really when they're learning from each other, they're learning a lot more as well. So one of the best aspects of collaboration is seeing my general education students working with my students with intellectual disabilities. So they really work together as a team, and there's a lot of peer teachers, students who want to teach, and so this is an excellent opportunity for that as well. So choice naturally allows me to differentiate instruction and projects and helps with the inclusion of all students. Choice-based projects are easily aligned with the National Core Art Standards. When I create a project, I pick a theme or a concept and then the standards. So first I teach the standards to the students so they know what is expected of them. Since we are a turnaround school, we are required to post the standards for our lessons on the board each day. So by using a backwards design to create my lessons, it helps my students to know what is expected of them, and also helps me to align the lessons while keeping up with my accountability to building expectations. So we also have weekly observations and work on building goals and 3-week cycles. So in all of the goals we've had as a building naturally align with choice. So when I design a lesson, I create a design sheet with the standards at the top, and then it has some guiding questions that align with the standards. And the guiding questions also help my students come up with an idea which aligns with the project theme. So this helps my students to have a motivation to brainstorm ideas for their projects. So in addition, I guess I should add right now that I'm really flexible and I can easily be persuaded for students to come up with a different themed project. And I very rarely tell them no if they have a really good idea, then I almost always let them go with their idea. So I frequently give them the opportunity to create a project with a different theme if they prove how it aligns with the standards. So some of the themes that I've used in the past are here listed. And some of the themes that I think are going to be really great, some of my students don't like at all and they don't work, and so I just changed them. So I currently have 5 themed projects for each grade. I see my students for 46 minutes for 9 weeks. And so about 5 is accurate. Sometimes they can do more, sometimes less, but this is just a really good brief list. You can definitely add a lot more themes. So this is my art room. Roosevelt Middle School Art Studio is what we call it. It is a very, very large classroom, and I would say it's one of the best in the whole district. I work in a fairly large district. There's lots of space, there's lots of organization. It allows me to have a lot of supplies out, to have a lot of centers. My students have assigned seats. It's what they need and what works best for them. However, if they are working on a collaborative project, then I do let them sit with their partners. So they might sit at the big white table in the back, or they might sit in an open seat if there's an open seat, or I will let them then trade. But I try to have them stay in their assigned seats. So my students aren't actually working at centers in my classroom. They're getting the supplies from the centers and then taking them to their desks. So I would say that my classroom is organized, and I have to be very flexible in this organization, and I have to be able to adapt. So I might think that something works one way, and then I have to change it because it's not working. My classroom setup is just constantly changing then. So here are some photos of the organization in my classroom. So being organized is really important to my student success, and it's also really important to my sanity. So if my classroom wasn't organized, my students could not be independent. So organization was actually the first step that I took as I began after I began research, I should say, as I began implementing choice. So the organization and layout is something that I would say that you could start right away, because even if you decide that you only want to add a little bit of choice, being organized for your students is going to help them be independent. So the photo on the left is one of my large closets. I have 4 of these, and so each student actually has their own tote. I know I have a lot of storage. So they have a numbered tote where they get to keep their artwork, and then the boxes on the top left are just random supplies that I keep put away, but I allow students to kind of look in there if looking for a supply, and then I generally get them down because it's kind of organized the way I want. So the photos on the right, the big drawers, I have a large drawer for each class. So if a student is working on a large artwork that does not fit in their smaller drawer, then they can keep their artwork in one of the larger pull-out drawers. And then I keep my supplies organized in containers. Many of the containers I got at a dollar store, or you can even use recyclable materials such as frosting containers or frozen TV dinners. Those work great for like chalk pastels. I have containers donated to me very frequently. The bottom right photo shows my Sharpies. I keep those on a shelf behind my desk. So if a student wants to use them, they come up and ask me for them. So that way I can kind of keep an eye on who's using them and make sure that they get put away. And then each center has books that coordinate with the supplies in the area. So this book photo is actually from my collage center. So it has a bunch of like altered book pages and bookmaking and paper ideas, collage books. So organization is very, very important. And later on in this presentation, I'm going to show you each of my center and kind of show you how I organize each center individually. So before we get into the organization of each center, I want to talk about mini demonstrations. So demonstrations are taught where all my students can see. So I have an Elmo document camera that I can project on my whiteboard, or sometimes I have them stand around a table, and sometimes I also show videos that I created prior to class or I have found on the internet. So for whatever reason, students seem to be more engaged when watching a video as opposed to me teaching. So if I record my video, then it allows me to show it to both of my classes, since I teach 2 6th grade, 2 7th grade, 2 8th grade. So it allows them to get the same information. And then I can also stop the video and add something if I feel like I need to, or I can repeat it. And for whatever reason, my students just work a lot better when they're sitting and watching a video. I don't make them very long at all. So mini demonstrations are about 5 to 10 minutes in length, and they're at the beginning of class. And I generally start my mini demonstrations at the beginning of the quarter in the drawing center. Then I move to painting or collage, and then printmaking, fiber. I had clay kind of somewhere in the middle, and then sculpture. So this slide is an example of a mini demonstration for a printmaking center. So you can demonstrate one method in a class or multiple methods depending on how long you have for your students. The first demonstration in the center generally takes longer because I introduce the materials and I address the organization of supplies, and we go over specific cleanup for each center. So I would say the first day demonstration would be longer, and then after that it kind of goes quicker. So signage is very important. Visuals help students to understand what is expected in each center. You can have procedural signs for each center, or ideas for projects. And then these two photos are from a center. The left one's from my ceramic center, and even though I don't have like a wheel to throw, I still provided these. So this is my drawing center. So some of the supplies that are in my drawing center are pencils, colored pencils, erasers, sharpeners, vine charcoal, cotton swabs, markers, crayons. I have glitter and metallic, some templates, compasses, rulers, oil pastels, chalk pastels. Pen and ink are stored in the paint center. And then I have drawing objects, which are actually toys, which can also be used for stop motion animation. And then I have drawing images, and of course I have a wide variety of drawing books for them to use. This is also where my sketch paper and scratch paper is kept. So generally, even though my students might be working on a collage, for example, they would get supplies from the collage center, and then they might have to get a couple supplies from the drawing center. So some people put supplies in like one center, and then they'll put the same supply in another center, but I just have them go to multiple centers. And this is my collage center. So in here I have paper, I have glue sticks, glue, specialty scissors, glue sponges, which are fantastic. They are just plastic containers with sponges, and then I dump Elmer's glue on them, and those work really good for collage. I also have some magazines, templates so they can trace, and some fasteners, punches, and collage books. This is the tempera and acrylic painting center, and you can also see in the photo that there's the fiber center on the left. But there are water buckets, brushes, paper towels. I have some palettes, liquid tempera paint, tempera cakes, tempera sticks, and acrylic paint. So my middle school students don't use acrylic paint a lot. So sometimes when I have them use acrylic, I will pull out a tote, like in the photo on the top right, and they'll just get the colors that they need. Or if we're doing a collaborative class project, then I will pull out the colors and I will keep them in certain spots. So like the bottom right photo is a area that's behind my desk. So we were working on a black, white, red, and gray project. So I just put the paint there for that project. So it really keeps it organized and out of the way. This is my watercolor painting center. And I separate this from my acrylic and tempera center just because I have enough room in my classroom. And it seems to work better because I kind of have some different directions for this center. And I want them to keep the paint palettes separate and the brushes separate. So it really works better if I keep the watercolor brushes over here and then the tempera paint brushes on the other side of the room. So the supplies here, bucket, paintbrushes, watercolor paint. There are liquid watercolor paints in the white containers that I actually made out of old Crayola markers. Paint palettes, there's paper towels, fluorescent liquid watercolor paints, and then also I have a procedure poster on the wall that shows them what they need to get and kind of some details. A lot of these can be found online. Pinterest is a great place to find these. Some of my centers don't have all of these done. The signage is definitely a work in progress. This is my fiber center. I have yarn, string, cardboard looms, fabric, and then I actually keep the needles for weaving up at the front of my classroom. So when a student needs a weaving needle, they ask for it, and then I can give it to them. So that kind of helps me to keep track of supplies. So I keep needles, knives, and Sharpies up on my desk. This is my printmaking center, and I guess I should tell you I didn't really clean for this video, so you can kind of see that sometimes the counters get a little bit messy if you're not able to really keep an eye on what your students are doing at all times. So we'll talk about cleanup here in a little bit, but this is kind of one of my newer centers. I've never had printmaking out before this year. So the supplies in this center are styrofoam rectangles. I have soft cut linoleum, rubber. I have some rubber rollers, paint rollers, which they can also use with paint or the ink. I have various tools to make prints in the buckets on the right. I have some printmaking ink, brayers, spoons, and then a printmaking book that I just got. So this has a lot of supplies that they need for printmaking. This is my clay center, which is new this year. Prior to this year, I had everything organized in a tote. So I added this table in the back of my room, and a lot of times this table is actually used for collaborative art projects. And so if I'm working on clay, then I keep my clay stuff on this table, but also students can come back and work together at this table when a clay project isn't in progress. So on the photo on the right, there are canvases on the bottom shelf. Then I have sticks and rolling pins. I have boards on the third shelf up on the left. On the right are buckets of tools, and then I also have buckets of noodles for students to use to make texture and patterns in the clay. On the top there are a pile of books, some styrofoam plates which are used to hold the clay inside of a plastic bag for them to keep in their drawer overnight, and then water buckets. So it really has all of the supplies out that they need. I should tell you that my clay center is not open all the time. I don't have the budget for a clay center to be open all the time, and so we do clay projects as a group all at the same time. And I actually do clay with all 3 grades at the same time, and we just have a week of really messy clay, and then we're done with it. So with the iPads in my classroom, and I actually have computers in the back, it's just too messy and not affordable for me to keep the clay center open all the time. So this is what works for me, and as you are implementing choice in your classroom, you'll find what works for you, which is a really great thing about choice. It doesn't look the same for everyone, and so my choice in my classroom has definitely changed throughout the years as well. This is a sculpture center, which is new this year. So on the left photo on the counter are some glue guns, which I always have them hang the cords off the counter so I can see that they are unplugged. And then in a little plastic container are the glue sticks. And then I have directions on the counter how to use the glue gun, which of course says that if you burn your hand, to run it under cold water immediately. There are some chairs that some of my students are working on painting that were donated, so those kind of are kept back there. They're not always there, but they are for now, so we kind of move them around. On the back corner, there is a cardboard box, which cardboard is kept in. On the pastel organizer, there are some random supplies such as foil, cardboard, paper, string, crayons, toys, straws, old library books. Donated materials, there was a student who kept bringing me in cardboard tubes, really large, almost like wrapping paper tubes, but they were about 4 inches in diameters, and his dad would cut them to about 4 inches high, which were great. My sixth graders actually worked on a Cane's Arcade unit project, and so they actually had an arcade open over conferences. So this sculpture center got used a lot during that quarter. So we don't always do the same themes, but that was a theme that the sixth graders wanted to do last year. So cleanup procedures, and this is probably something that a lot of you are really worried about, but I would say the more organized you are with cleanup, the less waste of supplies you're going to have. So I have my students clean up 5 to 8 minutes early, and I definitely give them reminders. So I don't just say, clean up. I'll say something like, we're going to clean up in 2 minutes, or I'll say, if you are working on something really messy today, why don't you start cleaning up? The rest of you have about 3 to 4 minutes. And I might even be specific and say, if you are painting, you should clean up. Or if you are working on a printmaking project, you should clean up. Or if you're drawing, you still need to work for another 3 minutes. And so it kind of helps them to gauge the time as well. I also pay attention to who is using what supplies. So as I'm walking around, I'm really being mindful of who's painting, who's using printmaking. And then when it comes time for cleanup, I ask for help. I really say, like, we are a group, we are a team, please help your classmates. If you're cleaned up, sit down. If you're, because I'll have some like wandering around. So I'll say, if you're wandering around, you need to be helping someone. Otherwise, you need to sit down. So you can also use a center chart as accountability to have students keep track of what supplies they're using. So if something happens, you can go back and see who was using exactly what. And I'm always really positive with my students. So at the end of class, I'll say, like, even if they're not doing a really good job cleaning up or washing brushes, I'll say, like, you're doing a great job washing your brushes. And it's almost like, oh, yeah, it's this reminder that they need, instead of me saying, like, wash your brush. So it seems that they handle the positivity a lot better. So when they're lining up, I'll say, thank you for pushing in your chairs, even though no one pushed in their chairs. And then all of a sudden they all push in their chairs. So it just really helps to be positive. And I really explained that this is their art room. These are their supplies and they need to take care of them. It's not mine. And so occasionally you will see that some students don't clean up very well. So I sometimes take photos of it, and then we have like a class discussion, because sometimes I forget to clean up. And that's really when the problems arise, is I forget to give them enough time to clean up. And so then they are not cleaning up their supplies, and they are wasting paint, or they're not, putting it in a Ziploc bag. And so, for example, the top middle photo is a photo I just took last week, and I know exactly who did it. And so I just talked to them, and I, said, this is what I found, and what could we have done differently? And, they were rushed. And so we just kind of talked about it. So I really feel that my supplies are wasted a lot less because they're really choosing what they want to use, and they're being more mindful of it. And I'm also able to order a lot more variety of supplies. So in the past, I was ordering like a classroom set of supplies, and I felt that my budget was just very small and didn't go very far. And my budget hasn't increased, but since I'm not ordering 15 of something, I might only order 4 of it. I can just order a variety of items. So it's really been great because I can add a lot more unique materials to my classroom and not just the materials that we've had in the past, and I don't have to order as much at a time. So I wrote a grant for a classroom set of iPads, and these are the iPads in their cart. Each student has their own iPad assigned to them, and so they use them periodically throughout the quarter. They use them to search images or find ideas for projects. We use Pinterest a lot in Artsonia for motivation for ideas. Also, they use them for stop motion or photo editing. So on the left, there is a green screen that I have in my classroom that we use periodically as well. So my students upload their artwork and artist statements to Artsonia. So they use a QR code reader for each art exhibit, and then they take a photograph of their artwork. So if it's a flat piece of artwork, they tape it down to their desk and take the photo there. And if it's a sculpture photograph, the item that they need to photograph, they put it in the white box that is in the photo on the left. So there's two different areas that they go, and they're really used to just scanning the QR code and uploading their artwork to Artsonia. So these are some of the artist statements that my students have wrote about on Artsonia. And one of the best things about Artsonia is not only is it getting their artwork out on the internet, but it's really allowing me to integrate the national standards into each and every project through the artist statement. So they are able to present and connect and respond through their artist statements and then uploading them to Artsonia. So I have specific questions that I want them to answer, and then they answer them in complete sentences, and then they compose a paragraph with those sentences. So they have to be writing in very complete sentences that make sense, and so we're doing a lot of editing, and it really helps their writing skills as well. So I am no longer getting answers such as, why did you create this artwork? Because you made me. Now they say things like, the message I'm trying to send with my artwork is color makes everything more joyful. So things like that. It is important to my culture because we play games and this. So showing them that talking about their art is a really important part of the creation process. Reflecting is very important, and Artsonia really helps them to learn how to write about it. I also use exit slips in my classroom. They're used as formative and summative assessment. They help students reflect on the creation process, and they're used as advocacy. So when I want to defend my program, I have an exit slip that says, how does choice-based art help you? And there's actually a handout in the choice-based art class for AOE where you can see exactly some of the student reflections that my students have wrote on an exit slip. So I have some general exit slips versus project or media specific ones, and I actually just keep a pile on my counter, and then I can grab them at the end of the day. Sometimes I plan for exit slips, and sometimes it's just very sporadic. So choice does matter, and I would love for you to contact me if you have any questions, if you have any ideas to share. My email is CassidyReinken@theartofed.com. I also have a Twitter account and a Pinterest account. So thank you for listening to this presentation.